Welcome to the Global Peace Film Festival Lives Online Conversation 2022 Festival Edition. Please join me, Kelly Devine, the Artistic Director, and Nina Strike, the Executive Director, in welcoming Jamie Boyle, the filmmaker of Anonymous Sister, a film that you can see as part of our 20th anniversary event in September. Our in-person programming begins September 19th and ends on September 25th, followed immediately by our virtual programming beginning September 26th and ending October 2nd. All the information about our film programming, non-film programming, schedule, tickets, etc., can be found on our film festival website, which is peacefilmfest.org. Now, please join us in welcoming Jamie Boyle. Thank you so much for your incredibly touching film about such an important issue.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So let's start out by Jamie, tell us about the film.
Sure. So the film is basically chronicles my family's experience with the opioid epidemic. And it follows us through 30 years. So before, during, and then in the aftermath. I really wanted to create a very holistic, intimate portrait of this issue, having lived it as I know so many have, but lend that lens to the headlines that I think you can start to become numb to after a while. And it felt like something I could offer that hadn't been out there yet and that could connect with people in a new way, I hope.
Well, Jamie, we had the honor of programming a film of yours previously, and that was not that was about a different subject matter at all. But this one's so intimate and so personal. As a filmmaker, why, what was part of the decision-making process to make yourself that open and vulnerable?
Yes, that's a great question. I mean, I will say, first off, after the fact, after having done it, I think it's something that every documentary filmmaker should explore at some point. It certainly has given me a new sympathy for the people that I film and a new insight into the dynamic that creates and just I think it's an important perspective to take into this craft now, and I find that I work differently now, although I'm certainly proud of the work that I've done before now and very grateful to the people who've participated in my previous films and shared their story. And this film is not even as much my story as it is my family's. I definitely hide behind the camera a little, and that's a bit in the film. It's my own kind of coping mechanism. So that dynamic's still at play. And this happening within my family is actually the reason I started documentary in the first place. I was actually in college still when I don't want to give anything away in the film, but one of my family members began taking opioids prescribed by their doctors for pain that started out acute and quickly turned into chronic pain. And I was taking a film course at the time. I was very frustrated and running into roadblocks within the medical community at every turn, trying to figure out what was happening and why she was getting worse and worse and no end in sight. And I picked up a camera and started asking questions and documenting it at a time when I really did not know what else to do or where else to turn. This was just before you could really, Google was as accessible as it is now, and you could find anything on there. So it was calling hotlines and calling doctors' offices, her doctor's office, just searching for answers anywhere I could and not really finding any. And so the camera provided that. And I was, 20 at the time. And then that launched me into a career in documentary. It really made me believe in this form of storytelling and it as a form of, hopefully enacting change or at least getting people to think about things in a new way. and in a way that hit a bit closer to home. So after about 10 years making docs about other people and things and issues, I decided I felt like I was in a place and my family was in a place where I could pick the camera back up and begin to document some of the aftermath within my family and then the country at large. And really now we're talking about the world because it has spread beyond the United States. But yeah, and also just to kind of widen that lens. I mean, I wanted to make the footage I had shot in college back into a feature film, but also in that time, I had seen it go from something that felt so intimate and personal to my family. Maybe you heard some other anecdotal stories, but to just this commonplace household word, opioids, the opioid epidemic, that in a way that was really a bit earth-shattering. So it felt like I needed to come back to it, and I just felt pulled to. And also, certain things were happening within my family that you'll see in the film that made it feel all the more relevant to start documenting again, seeing some of the things that hadn't changed. That was very frustrating to witness. Yeah, so that's the long and the short of what brought me to it, and then brought me back to it again.
Well, and as you had alluded to, this issue, affects just about every part of the United States. It's an enormous issue in Florida. It's an enormous issue where I live in Suffolk County, Long Island, New York State, and it's very difficult for people to get their arms around. And what I found really remarkable about your approach to telling the story was that while you come into the story through as intimate a connection as possible, because this is your family, you also do make sure at very strategic points to connect it to this larger this kind of the larger forces, that it's not just simply a personal failing. It's not just simply a personal or a moral issue, or any of the kinds of ways that people want to just individualize the issue and so feel as if it doesn't touch them. And I thought you really interwove those things quite skillfully in a way that I really hope people appreciate.
Thank you. That means a lot to hear you say that. That was certainly the goal. There were many edits of this film, some that I had more of the national, more of the kind of larger forces that be. And as somebody who lived it and wanted to know all about that, I would fall down rabbit holes that, led to all the upper echelons of power and resources in this society. And what I found, there are award-winning journalists doing that work, and I was actually very grateful to see that work happen around that time, because it allowed me to the feedback we kept hearing was that people really wanted the personal side of this, and that was something that we could offer in this film. But at the same time, like you say, to just show that would be to do a disservice to the larger forces that were at play and how exactly this unraveled. So a lot of it was finding that balance between how much to bring in and leave out. And there's so much wrongdoing and misinformation that we could have also put in there. So it was really having to be diligent and trust that people will come to it, meet people where they're at when they're coming to it with a familiar story, and then also trust that where it makes sense for them, they'll seek out the information, and we can encourage them to do that and provide resources and links and all those kind of things. But it's taken on so many different facets at this stage too, that it's impossible to lead people where they might need to go, because it's so dependent on how you got brought into, how you fell victim to this issue, and then what stage you're at, and how you're finding a way out. So yeah, and certainly one of the goals was to start to strip away at that lethal stigma of substance use. You would think that something this pervasive now, that's affected someone in almost everybody's immediate family, that alone would do it. and not to mention knowing what a role big pharma played. But there's just something about substance use that we really have a hard time, I think, yeah, lending that sympathy towards. I think part of it and why I felt this film was important is that what it looks like when you're in the depths of it. It's very dehumanizing. It's, all the things that could push somebody away or distance society are at play. Hygiene goes out the door, and social skills, and all of the things that keep us, all your contributions to society, jobs, friends, all those things really push society out, and that can become the vicious cycle. And so what I felt like with this film is I had 20 years of home movies before this started, and so you could really know the people who this was happening to and know them after. And that felt like something that nothing in the news or the headlines or had really touched on yet. Fictional stuff is starting to, but it's not the same as seeing it happen to what should feel like a family member.
No, it's well said. And what it in your answer, what I was really thinking about was how it reinforces why we selected this film. Our mission is about peace building, and so part of that is that when we show these films, we're showing them not simply for the fact that they are compelling films and they are worth people's time, which certainly they are, but more importantly, for what happens when the lights come up. What is it that they can do? What can they take back into their own personal lives or into their own communities? And you had mentioned, these other resources and so forth. What do you hope for that people will take away from screening this? And do you have any resources maybe on your website?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are in the midst of starting a full-fledged impact campaign that's still being designed. But one of the things we're doing in the meantime is at almost every festival screening, at as many as we can, we're doing, including Narcan training and Narcan handouts. Now we've realized that can be hard at some festivals or just limited because of city resources right now. So we've started to offer, there's a training video on our website. It's like 30 seconds or 2 minutes. And there's also places you can pick up Narcan if you are somebody who takes opioids illicitly or prescribed, somebody who does, or even things like ride public transit. You come into contact with, people, unhoused people, mentally ill people a lot, or people who you think might have substance use. We had an executive producer who has overdosed 2 people reversed the overdoses of 2 people on subway platforms, actually in Brooklyn, in the past 6 months. I have a friend from home who her husband had issues after being prescribed them after surgery just this last year. She had to use the Narcan on him at one point. It's really pervasive, but that's just one small thing you can have on you. And there's really a community effort to get that in a lot of hands. And then, I already talked about stigma, so I won't address that again, although that's a big one. I hope that people just see this disease in a new light and have, especially right now, we've seen such an awful fallout after COVID. There's already horrifying numbers that we saw shattered last year after the isolation of the pandemic. So I'd say also when you see that person on the street or in the shelter, or sometimes even in your own family, and it takes a lot, but just try to have that compassion and sympathy and understand what they're actually dealing with. And I think that will change our approach to this issue and to people in general who are really, really suffering, and everything they're undergoing is also contributing to them, the way they look, the way they act, and remember that they are somebody's son, they're someone's daughter, they could be someone's father. So that's a huge part. And I would also just say that not the fault of the medical community, but the misinformation is still very pervasive. So just be your own advocate when you're, at the doctor or with your family members. Just inform yourself. It's not, the information's out there. CDC has new guidelines that not every doctor is following. This doesn't have to be a pill mill doctor. This is often dentists that just prescribed too many Vicodin after a wisdom teeth removal, and it's still not making their way into their offices, sadly, or their prescribing practices. So just really be aware that this is still an issue that the medical community is still trying to fix and is nowhere near done. I've heard plenty of stories throughout the past year of people still falling prey to opioid addiction through the hands of their doctors. And, no malicious intent on any side, but that's just where we're still at. So we have tons of links on our website. You can also sign up for a newsletter, but it's not too overwhelming. It's very organized. But I would also just say there are support groups in almost every community now. That's the good thing about this issue being this pervasive, is there's somebody who's been through it. And I've found that so many people have told me that I'm the first person they've told that they're dealing with such and such. So I'd say just talk to people. If you feel comfortable, be open about it with friends and family, what you've gone through, because people are still really suffering in silence. My parents live in Florida, and they have neighbors who they're the first people they've told because they saw the film and, had just lost their son. I mean, these horrible things that people are going through, and none of their friends know how he died, things like that. And that also exacerbates it, right? Because if we're not talking about it, it's more people are falling prey to it. So it was a lot of advice, but take what works for you.
That's such a lot of really good, important advice as well, and concrete things that people can do to make a difference in not only their lives but the lives of others, as you've described. So, what can people do to support your work, and what is next for you?
Well, thank you for asking. I have some stuff in development. I try to keep my website updated, and we are also hopefully planning for this film a theatrical release next spring. So follow us for those reasons. Hopefully there will be a broadcast and streaming rights to follow where you can point people towards the film. For me, I'm editing another feature right now that will hopefully be coming out next year as well. That kind of details it's a little secret, but an organization who's working towards kind of upending the news industry and creating a new path forward in light of what we've seen over the past couple years. So I'm very excited about that one. Again, my website and social media, I'll always try to keep updating those, but I really appreciate festivals like this one who have now showcased two of my films, and yeah, we really appreciate you guys and helping share our work, because it's a tough climate out there. A lot of people vying for the attention of the masses, and yeah, so that's what's going on with me. And we will also hopefully be doing an educational campaign for this film, and that will be partly through medical schools and things like that, but also universities and anybody who wants to bring it into their community or organization and use it to have discussions, or maybe bring something up within their own family or community. We've had it used personally on a personal basis for those purposes, and we've realized it could be helpful. So these are all still things in development, but we're working with Eliza Licht, who did the outreach and impact campaign for films like Disclosure and Belly of the Beast, and she really has this phenomenal way of taking these stories that we tell and catapulting them to doing the most good you can ask for, and having these long lives outside of just the first showing, and hopefully creating change thereafter. So.
Oh, that's fantastic that you're working with Eliza. She's also involved in another film that we are programming this year, Into Dust. So I would recommend, yes.
I do know that film. Oh, great. Yes, that's a fantastic film.
Small world, a small, lovely world. Thank you so much, Jamie, for this was a wonderful interview. And thank you so much, again, for having been so open and sharing of your life to create this film. It's a wonderful gift, I think, for people who watch it. So I really strongly,
thank you.
You're welcome. I really strongly recommend everyone who is watching this, not only to seek this film out, but to recommend it to others. And I thank you for watching this Glow. We've been talking to Jamie Boyle, the filmmaker behind Anonymous Sister. And you can find out more information by going to this website, anonymoussister.com. You can find out more about those links and resources, which I think will be very helpful for either your own family or, as Jamie acknowledged, so many people that we know are experiencing this. And this film, again, is part of our 20th anniversary program. Our in-person programming begins September 19th, running through the 25th. And immediately that is followed by our virtual program beginning September 26th, ending October 2nd. All the information can be found on peacefilmfest.org. Thank you, and we'll see you at the next Glow.